Yeah, if you want.
Diddle-a-dum-dum, British Strongman Podcast, episode 88, 87, 86. So today what I want to talk about, Shane, is the 7 staples of strongman programming in terms of exercises. We're just thinking about something interesting that we could talk about.
Okay, just so everybody knows, by the way, we get zero. Well, I don't know about you, but I get zero notice on this podcast. So 7 states. This is something I just need to prep for. Well, I can do it off the top of my head. To be fair, I already know the answer, but it's quite a complex topic, that, Josh.
Yeah. Well, literally, I've just made my lunch. I finished about 10 minutes ago, and I just made some yogurt and berries, and I thought, right. I know Shane won't have prepared anything to talk about, so let's create something interesting. So I just thought it'd be quite interesting. We have to pick 7 exercises. If we had to build a program around 7 exercises,
around 7 exercises, right? Okay, I thought you meant like principles mainly.
No.
Exercises, right? Okay.
Yeah, just exercise. There's so many angles that we could go at with this. And what I want to do is, in the next 10, 15 minutes or whatever, talk about 7 exercises that we agree on and we compromise and we agree on, and then some that we maybe don't agree on and what we change. All right, so we'll just go back and forth. You go first, staple. And let's be specific with the variation as well, and assume that, let's be specific with the variation.
Yeah, I would say for my programming, well, if we have to pick obviously I say log, but to me, I do push and strict. So does that count as 2 or?
That's 2.
Right. Well, I would just go with push then mainly, to be honest with you. But for me and my programming, it always starts off at push as the fundamental. But for 50-50 clients, 50% of my clients end up transitioning to strict. Not out of any fault or anything, it goes that way with the way we teach it. So I would say if I had to pick one in this scenario, I would still stay with log, clean and push press, because most people would start off running that. And the reason why I would choose that over an axle or a barbell or whatever is, for me, I truly believe that the log, you can accumulate more volume and frequency on a log. Well, most people can anyway. Because most people in strongman don't have a perfect rack position and technique for the barbell and axle, whereas the log, it's very quick to pick up. They can do more volume, more frequency, etc. on it. So if I had to pick like a press variation, I'll go log.
Great answer. And I'd agree with that. And I'd agree with log push press as well. I feel like obviously your style, you like getting people strict pressing, better at strict pressing, support the push press, blah, 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 blah. Like I'll go down the route of getting a solid push press and then introduce jerk variations and stuff like that. But for most people, in terms of listening to this, that are going to get the most value, log push press. And I find that, and I would pick the log and log push press ahead of like axle and barbell, because I find that from my experience, that if you get someone push pressing a log really well, that will transfer really well to the axle and the barbell and stuff. You can get them controlling a rack on the log, it'll transfer over to axle. But the same is not necessarily true the other way around. And you see a lot of people, they'll get really good at like barbell press from the rack or whatever, expect themselves to be kind of, but don't necessarily know, like, respect how difficult it's going to be the transition to log in terms of feel and stuff like that. So I agree with that, definitely.
Yeah, I also agree. I think, just like you're saying, if you get good at log, it's an easy transition. Let's say you had axle come up in a comp and you got 4 weeks notice and you've been logging.
Yeah.
Easier transition from log to axle rather than the other way around. So Yeah, I think that's class. And you know what I think, going off a little tiny mini bit off topic, I think it's class. I always think this, that our coaching services, it's kind of well known now. If you come to me, I'm going to get you stripped in a log and you're probably going to get pretty good at it. And certain style of lifters that think they might be more suited to that can kind of come to me. I don't ever really put jerk, unless if someone asks to do, but I don't really push the split jerk. And I think it's cool that you do, because there are athletes out there that are more suited to that. And our coaching services are like good and different. And, I think it's just cool how we've got our own little way that's both successful. I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So what we're going to say, we're going to say log lift, or are we going to say, i.e. the clean and press as one, or are we going to say, would you just choose the push press from shoulders?
Push press, the log clean and push press, because to me it's in the middle. It's in between a split jerk, in between a strip press, and most people can do it, off the bat. So yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah. So I would say the log lift, specifically the push press, and I would say that including the clean on this lift as one of the 7 lifts that we're going to go for is going to be great, because if you're cleaning a log, the transfer that we can have over to like say loading events, and just basically like being really explosive with the lower body, and the skill level's pretty low. Like you can just say to people, launch the log up to your shoulders, explosive as hell, and there's not much that can go wrong with, to be honest.
Yeah, you can get all the benefits of triple extension and a power clean on a log.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and you teach somebody a power clean or something, it's going to literally take, it's just going to literally take fucking months, isn't it, to get a power clean technique even slightly efficient. So yeah, you get all the benefits quickly on the log. The clean, like say, loading events, stones, just getting good at understanding that position on the stomach and where's most efficient. Get loads of benefits from it.
Right, so I'm gonna have an easy one then. So I'm gonna say deadlift from the floor. I'm gonna say stiff bar. Yeah, stiff bar deadlift from the floor. Just found no brainer really. I think most of the comps you'll be deadlifting from the floor. A lot of people fall into this thing of thinking that strongman, so we can use a deadlift bar, but actually most comps really there'll be some kind of stiff power bar or standard bar or even like an axle. You find that a transition over to axle from a stiff bar can feel quite similar. And I feel like a lot of people, I don't feel like I'm one of these. I feel like I need a bit of a transitional phase, but I know for a fact, a lot of people, they'll pull on a stiff bar and then they'll go and even leave it till comp day where they'll go and pull on a deadlift bar and they'll feel like, oh, deadlift bar is amazing. Personally, I like to kind of build the skill or whatever. But anyway, stiff bar deadlift from the floor. What do you think, Jay?
So next one I will go with is a front squat. I think we should get some deep knee flexion in there. I think the front squat, I like to rotate my squat variations personally when in my programming. But if I had to pick one, I would say the front squat has the best carryover, especially if we're taking into account the log that we're doing for like the overhead press style lift that I've picked. I would say that the front squat enables the person to get into front rack. And if they don't have the mobility for it, at least they can work towards a front rack position, which would make the transition from like log to axle a little easier because you attain a front rack. Also, you're building that upright torso, thoracic strength, and it's a quad dominant movement, which we would like to get at least one exercise in of that fashion in. I also just think the front squat's got the best carryover to strongman, to be honest. So yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I love the fact that, yeah, if I had to pick one, it'd probably be front squat. I would say kind of going against what I said, buddy, 10 minutes ago, being specific, but I would say front loaded squat. And I'll very often get people to, I'll often put that at the start of a phase or a cycle, whatever, and then get them to pick a variation that they're confident in executing well, whether that be, say, front rack, whether it be cross grip, whether it be with straps, whether it be, some people just hold a better technique and get the head around it better with a Zercher squat, and find that they can go really heavy and feels good on the knees and the joints and stuff like that. So generally, I'd say a front load, even like, say, doing like a sandbag squat or a stone squat as a progression from like a heavy goblet squat. So for those people who are listening who haven't done much squatting, or you find it, you've tried back squatting, and a common thing that with people struggling to back squat is they struggle to, a lot of people struggle hitting depth, through flexibility, motor control, whatever. But you just find that generally, if you can find a front-loaded squat that you can rack really well, i.e., say like a goblet squats, you're kind of really good teaching tool for people. If you grab like a 20-kilo dumbbell, hold it in front of you, you're going to have a lot easier time learning how to get into that kind of deep knee flexion, hip flexion control. But the advantage of doing like, say, a sandbag squat, say grabbing like a 40, 50, 60 kilo sandbag, is you're getting a lot heavier stimulus than, say, the goblet squat, but it's just so easy to rack. You just bear hug it, and then the weight acts as a counterbalance and just guides you into this perfect squat position. So if you're listening and you're somebody who's tried front squats and you just can't get the rack feeling good, even with straps or whatever, just try doing like grabbing like a heavy sandbag and doing some squats, or a light stone or something like that. And you might be surprised at how easy it is to get yourself into the rhythm of doing that. Find that maybe doing 3 or 4 weeks doing that, and then go back to your front squats, you might, whilst say you could do something like a sandbag or a Zercher squat while simultaneously working, like, say, front rack mobility in between sets as like a superset or a pair, and that as like almost like a preparation phase for going into some front squats. Anyway, I've got into a bit more depth for that. But yeah, front squats, I think, absolutely brilliant, especially for strongman, because obviously we've talked in depth about the transfer to overhead events and stuff like that. But just simply, you look at any kind of strongman comp, and you look at what we're doing in terms of training or preparation. Most of the exercises are posterior chain dominant, aren't they? They're using the backside of the body. You're talking your cleans, your deadlifts from different heights, your pickups from the floor, your Palmer's pickups, your loading events and stuff. It's largely posterior chain dominant. So we get these like strong hamstrings, back, stuff like that. So if you're doing like a low bar squat, obviously that's going to be more posterior chain dominant than say a front loaded squat. But you find with a lot of people who do strongman, who have got this posterior chain dominance of like do a high bar or a safety bar squat, and then, like we've talked about in recent episodes, like they'll be fighting against this kind of basically the posterior, the back and the hamstrings and glutes wanting to do all the work, and the quads not working properly, not working as well as they could be. Whereas the front squat is kind of holding you more accountable to that upright torso, and in terms of giving you that more quad activation. What do you reckon, Shane?
Yeah. 100%. I think the front squat's fucking class, mate, to be honest with you. I used it a lot with people. And yeah, I think that the only problem I see with front squat is people's attitude towards it, because oftentimes they get under the bar on the first session if they've not really done it before. And sometimes this is where I find it gets a bit skewed, is when people have a big back squat, but they've never really front squatted. And they want to front squat like big weights. So they come in and 70 kilo feels all right. They put like 100 on 120. They feel like it's going to slip off and they don't like the rack position and they spit the dummy out and don't persevere with it. Whereas as soon as you acquire that rack position where it's just completely straight through midline and it feels sweet, it becomes a lovely exercise. And you can always tell the attitude. I've obviously coached a lot of lifters, so you can kind of see the attitude difference between some people, where some people will be like, on the feedback, they'll write, you know what, this felt shit. Ego got the better of me. Next week, I'm just going to do one plate, mate, and I'm going to figure this shit out. And then they go from there and build up. Whereas other people would be like, nah, mate, this is fucking shit. I couldn't do it. It was bullshit. I don't want to do it. It's frustrating me. Let's get safety bar back in. And the two different mindsets. That's why I like front squat, because I tell those people like that. I'm like, no. I'm like, you're a fucking fanny. Like, you're front squatting. You're not getting the safety bar. Figure it out. And sometimes I've got to force people to go through it. But then once they come out the other end, it's always worth it. So I've never ever thought to myself that the front squat, I'm always confident to force people to front squat, because I know once they're finished that going for that shit phase of acquiring the rack and getting the position, etc., it'll benefit them so much. Yeah, I would definitely stick it as if I had to pick 7 exercises, it'd definitely be in there. Right, next one then, Josh. Your shot. Number 4, what we're going with?
I'm going to say a front carry of sorts. I'm going to say some kind of front carry, maybe a sandbag carry, or some kind of front carry. So either a sandbag carry, or I'm thinking in my head like a Zercher carry. If I had to pick one, just because the rationale behind them both. So the sandbag, obviously it's great. It's going to feel similar to, like, say, it's going to be great for medleys. It's going to be great for building endurance for carries for distance, and it's going to transfer to like Husafel, Conans, stuff like that. What's great about the sandbag is that once you can push yourself, and once you're done, you can push yourself to the limit. The sandbag just drops on the floor, and nobody gets hurt. It's a safe piece of kit to really use. Whereas the problem with the sandbag is, like, if you just had to pick, if you don't have a large selection of them, like, it can be quite limiting. If you've just got a 60, it can be, say, too light for some stuff, but like a 90 could be too heavy for some stuff. The thing what I like about the idea of the Zercher carry is, like, it's so scalable in terms of the weight that you can put on. You can just put it. I like having them so the yoke is just skimming off the floor, so you can go you could go really heavy, you could go wide. You'll probably do up to like 200, 250 or something like that with a really high pickup. If you wanted to do an event where you're, say, doing like a Husafel from the floor or whatever, you just put the crossbar lower to prep for that. If you wanted to do it, practice the flexion pick element of the pickup as well, you just put the crossbar lower. So I quite like that, because I think you can get that to transfer to any kind of, you can get it feeling like a Conan's, you could get it feeling like a sandbag by putting the thing low and get it up. It's so easy to scale in terms of weight. You could do 50 kilos one session, could do 250 the next session. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. Actually, I'm going to go Zercher front carry, Zercher yoke.
Convince yourself.
Pardon?
Convince yourself there, didn't you?
Yeah. When I thought about it, I just think. Yeah, I just think that thinking about it there, reflecting on it, I think it's more transferable. I think you can get that to transfer to sandbag carry, but not necessarily sandbag transfer to that. Like, I think that would be better for prepping for like a Conan's, finding the right position for Conan's. I think it would feel more similar to Husafell or a shield carry. Yeah, quite like that actually. You could do like start up at the bottom and just do the pickups and do like bottom, like a kind of like a front squat variation. Yeah, I fucking love that actually, thinking about it. But it's one of those things that I don't actually program for people that much because you have access to all this other kind of kit. Like one day we'll do a sandbag, the next week we'll do like sandbag for distance, so you can go with one of the lighter sandbags. Then we'll do a heavy Husafell or lower and then we'll do a keg. Whereas actually, if you just had to pick one, I think thinking about it, the Zurcher yoke could be similar, could have transfer to all those individual things better than the individual things would have transfer to each other. Go on then, Shane, fight me on that.
I mean, to be honest, mate, I would say a front carry needs to be in there. In my opinion, carry, as long as there's... I mean, I wouldn't do it. I don't program that. Well, you just said you don't program it. I wouldn't say, is this something I don't use regularly? I would just say sandbag, because like I think that it's more likely someone's going to get a sandbag than a Conan's, basically. That'd be my only argument. Is I completely understand what you're saying, but 90%, 80% of comps are going to have some kind of keg sandbag medley or sandbag loading or something usually, and then your odd one's going to have a Conan's. But I think they both, like I said, they all carry over to everything. So I think as long as you've got a front carry should be a fundamental in a strongman program. And realistically, I don't think it matters too much what it is, as long as someone's doing a front carry consistently.
Right, go on then. Let's be pussies and just say, yeah, number 4, front carry. And then we've given people an idea there on there. 2 different angles. So we've got log lift, stiff bar deadlift from the floor, front squat, front carry. Your go, Shane. What have we got next?
This is where we're going to start disagreeing, I think, because we've only got 3 left. We've got 5, 7 left. Now, we need a grip for definite. So the grip's an easy cop. I'm not going to pick that one. We definitely need a grip because we're not going. And
you can't just say that and then not.
No, I'm not. When you've only got 3 left, this is where our programming styles completely differ, because I'm a huge fan of distance and structural balance. And I would, if I had to pick 7 exercises for somebody and they had to run it for a year, I would favour structural balance and longevity over specificity. I can never say that word. So although I need a stone, I would probably say you need a stone and you need a grip, but I would personally favour, I'm not sure whether I would go with hip or shoulder stability. I would probably go with a pull-up is what I would go with, because I would use it to do grip and I would use it as a lat assistance and shoulder health exercise. You could do passive hangs on there for grip in between your pull-ups. You train your lats. It's the opposite movement of an overhead press. And you can vary that up with, different grips and different positions, neutral grip, wide grip, supinated grip, fat grip, on little balls, whatever, for extra grip work. So I would personally go a little bit different to what maybe expected and go with a pull-up.
Okay, so we're just to agree on that, we're going to have to say grip, aren't we? Grip. I'd say grip carry. I'd say farmers. I'd say farmers carries, because obviously the grip stuff, blah 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 blah. I'd say that if you can do farmers well with the instability of the having to stabilize both sides, you go to a frame and generally you'll find it easier. Yeah, I'd pick a farmer's carry over a frame. So we're going to say grip anyway as that whole thing. And then the specifics of that is where we disagree, because I believe that I I believe in structural balance as well, and I think it's important. And I believe that can be achieved through doing the stuff that's, if you add constraints and prioritize certain things when you train, I believe that can be achieved with doing like the strongman exercises. But anyway, I think that's a fucking another episode in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really the main. Our training philosophy and opinion and stuff are fairly similar, really.
Yeah.
One of our big things that's quite different is, I use a lot of bullshit, don't I? That's what I call it as well, bullshit. Like, I use a lot of glute work, isolated glute work that's not specific at all to strongman. It's more about the human, more so. Like, I don't even not even care what they do. Like, I'd give that stuff to anyone in any sport.
Yeah.
Situation, whereas you're more about adjusting the specific movements, which I think, it's a credit to your coaching, because like the progressions that you've been able to give to people, like the twins is a good example, because they're obviously known for the deadlift, but when you just don't look at that and you look at everything they've done, it's a very noticeable improvement across the board, and they never really get injured, do they? So, it's obviously.
Well, that's it. Like, I feel that, like, I get like a great example. We're both on the same page in terms of like structural balance, and like is fucking paramount, and recovery, and like that's probably the number one training principle for me, is like getting people so they feel able to train and put in the work consistently by being recovered. We can't just fucking do exactly. We can't just do the things that you're good at, or you want to all the time, or just go really, really heavy all the time, or whatever, or just do the same thing all the time, because of this recovery thing. And like we say, structural balance that we both value, but like our kinds of routes to get in there is different, which is really interesting. It'd be good to talk about another episode, actually.
Yeah, there's no what. I'm real open-minded to training. I think the right way or wrong way, but what's happened is me and you have had similar-ish personal issues, and I fixed mine one way and researched and done and applied this way. And you remember when you did your back, you rehabbed your back, didn't you, by deadlifting. So, it kind of led you in that direction. And I think it's class, because I always say this, I don't know everything. I'm never going to know everything. And there's too many variables, and there's too many ways to achieve the same outcomes. There's no point. I never think my way is right, this is wrong. I just know my way works. And I'm like, I'm not going to change it, because I'm like, this is the way I've gone. So I think it's good. This is why I like this podcast as well, because it's hard to talk to people that are doing this, because we could be seen as competition, couldn't we? But we don't like, you know what I mean? But we both understand that we're not, and we can help each other.
I think what is so good is the both we're saying these things, and we're both fucking. I think it's great that all these important things that I feel like some people just ignore or aren't aware about, or they haven't had to deal with stuff that comes from that. Like, I think it's great that we both like acknowledge that it's such an important thing. It's just the way that we address it is completely different. Do you know what I mean? Like in order to keep, like, it's not just that we haven't been lucky fucking coaching people for years and getting them better and getting people niggles, like people get niggles and injuries and things flare up, and I don't panic, you don't panic, you know what you do, you know what you'll pull back and add this in or whatever. I know what I'll do. And that's a really good point, is like people staying away from injuries and stuff like that, and managing injuries. I don't think it's a coincidence that say a lot of the time we're keeping most people pushing the bodies like to extremes almost, but because we value these principles, even though we address them in different ways, like I think it's really impressive from both of us, to be honest. But yeah,
perfect. I mean, but every time something happens, I always learn from it, and then you know, it's just the way it goes, isn't it? But yeah, it's cool. So we've got 5. We'll settle on grip on that one. Did I choose that one or you? I chose that one, didn't I?
Yeah.
So number 6 then, Joshua.
I'm going to say stone loading. Yeah, I'm going to say stone loading, or I'm going to say loading, and then we can decide like how specific are we going to decide on that. Like we're going to say.
I would say stone as well. I consider stone almost like, you know, you got bench dead and powerlifting. I really consider stone as like one of those strongman, because even if it's not in every comp, usually at the bigger shows, like if you're going to nationals like that, there's probably going to be a stone run or a stone for reps or something like that. It's to me, and it's just a classic strongman event, and it should be that way. I think it should be in most comps, because everybody knows. Like I love it where it's like, oh, it comes down to stones. You know, I love that when it comes down to stones. I think it's cool, and yeah, to me, it's an event that it builds a lot of posterior chain strength from the pickups. Teaches a lot of cues that are applicable to many events in strongman. The position that you get into for the extension, again, whether you replace that for a keg or a sandbag or an odd object or a log, it's all similar-ish extension. I mean, obviously slight adjustments, but I think stone's fucking class, mate. And I like to talk about it now because I'm back doing stones every week, and reminding me how much now that I don't get any pain and I can just train them again. Oh, mate, they're fucking class. I love them.
Brilliant. So, yeah, and the thing is, it's one of those things where you could say, well, in terms of movement patterns, a heavy sandbag is going to transfer well, but everybody needs to learn how to use tacky. Like that. That's just the thing. Even lads who are really strong, who are like, say, getting into strongman, say someone who've come from powerlifting and they've got really big numbers, the pressing's good, the deadlifting's good, the moving, whatever, they still need to learn how to put tacky on and what that feels like compared to not using.
Not just about slapping it on, is it? Because it was you that taught me this. I'd obviously done stones for years before you'd even ever lifted a stone. But then you being the way you are and so intricate and break everything down, you spoke about tacky once. And we're talking about how you want to put on your hands and the way you place your hand on the stone, and you don't need as much on your forearm. And I was always one of these that when we got the tacky, we just slapped it everywhere. Hands, forearms, like fucking my bicep. I didn't care where it was. I just get tackied up. And then I was doing it wrong without knowing for years. And 2 things helped me get rid of my pain on the stones. First one was actually training my biceps in isolation, because they were so weak in isolation. They were just terrible, mate. So that definitely had a big impact. But then the second impact was learning where to put my hands on the stone exactly, learning where I should be applying the most squeeze into the stone, if that makes sense. Because before I was just like getting my forearm and wrist and hand and everything and squeezing with everything and just relying on the amount of tack to like lift the stone off the floor. Whereas when I learned to put a bit more force into my hands on the pickup and be a bit more relaxed in the forward, like it's still touching, but I'm not actively like squeezing this top bit into the stone as much.
Yeah,
that reduced a lot of pain. So like you say, it's even just putting the tacky on and where to put it and how to do it, it's a skill. Like and I think a lot of strongmen will have the habits that I had because I wasn't even aware of them. You know what I mean? Until someone told me. I didn't think of that shit myself. And it wasn't until you did that I started trying it. And Joe Sco did as well. Joe Sco's been doing some of the things. I can't remember where he said it. Maybe he just did a video on it. I don't know. I seen it somewhere anyway, and so did Joe. And we've been doing it, and it honestly works really well.
Yeah, nice one. So yeah, and you get your head around that skill, and then you can go and apply that to like a heavy sandbag pickup, because it's the same principles of trying to keep your arms long and using your hand like almost like a wrist, like a little shovel, if you will, rather than kind of squeezing with the biceps. But you could get really, really strong with the sandbag, go to stone, and then be really, really struggling if you don't like, because you can't read it. You can't watch my fucking you can't watch people's Instagram and YouTube and shit and then like be like, oh yeah, well I know what to do. It is something that you need to feel, and you need to know what it feels like when you go to try and break that stone off the floor and you feel like it's attached to your hands or your arm or whatever, and you're not having to over squeeze, if you will, which again will transfer to the other kind of any kind of pickup between the legs. So number 7, final one for today. And by the way, I just picked 7 because I thought it sounded interesting, but we could do 10, we could do 5. I think we've got a nice little list here, something to finish off with.
If I had to choose something, I would probably, it's a bit random this one as well, I'd probably choose a throw, mate, to be honest with you, because
that's a good, really good call, actually.
Yeah, just because it's easy to recover from, it teaches so many principles, and it carries over to a lot of things. It's a common-ish event that's cropping up, but also I think you get a lot more out of a throw, don't you, than just being good at the throw. Learning how to hips, getting your extension right, the fact that you can do the frequency with it, it's concentric only, really, but for the most part, anyway. It's all right. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. We'll go with that then. So ones that didn't quite make the list that I was going to say, if you'd have come to me then, I was going to say yoke, just because it seems to be in a lot of competitions. It'll. The
reason I didn't say yoke is just because I'm thinking we're moving with the yoke, and we've got the farm. You said I said farmers on grip, so I was like, I sacrificed a bit of moving for. Another thing that I thought was drag, mate, because I think drags are really underutilized. I've been putting a lot of drags in recently, not just because they're in comps, but I think they're just really good for like your knees, your conditioning, grip. There's a lot of stuff you get from drags.
And again, it's getting that with like a sled drag, you're getting some anterior chain stuff in there. So it's like that you're getting the quad extension, aren't you? Like the squatting. So this could be an example where people are like really, really strong. They don't necessarily train sled drag, but they kind of expect to do it on, or they might think I've been really good at truck pull. I can do drags that way, but they go to reverse it and it's a completely different set of muscle groups where it's like we said, we can't rely on that kind of back strength as quite as much, and it's there's more about quad extension where I think that's, and what was the other thing that I was going to say? We've missed something else. So that's the list. Log lift, stiff bar deadlift from the floor, front squat variation, front carry. I'm going to say grip. Shane said pull-ups. I said farmers. Loading, we both agreed on stones there. And then Shane said throwing. I would have said yoke. But yeah, I can't discredit the throw because it's coming up. That's an example with the throwing that's coming up so much in comps. And there's no shortcut to it. You need to fucking practice it. And even if you're an absolute animal, like an animal that can launch. Do you remember when Mitch came? Mitch did it, and he threw the fucking sandbag to the back of the room, and it was just
Well, did you watch Brit?
Yeah.
Did you see Ryan England's?
Yeah.
That's an example of someone, if he trained that properly and got taught,
Yeah.
he had loads of power, but it was just really miscued. So yeah, it's like you say, there's no way around it, is there? Like you need to practice it.
That's a really good example actually, because you could tell that with Shane. Like he'd beaten Tom Stoltman on that. He came first, didn't he? Shane Fowers, absolutely amazing. And like you can't just pick him up and be as good as that, because that, what was it, the 28, the final bag, was it? That was on his limit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like it was close to his limit. He could have very easily been a couple of degrees out, hit the crossbar, and then all of a sudden he's fucked. And he's gone from
everything had to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it would go over. And that run, because someone said to me that Tom Stoll could, because there was a 4.5 or 5 second difference between Shane and Tom Stoll. And someone said that Tom Stoll could have beat him if they wanted. And I was like, it's a different ball game, mate. 5 seconds is a different, because Tom could take his time and make sure everything was perfect.
Yeah.
As soon as you try and chip 5 seconds off that, it's 50. I mean, admittedly, he could do it, but it's not just a definite. He could miss one. You know what I mean? He could throw it like out here. It's really, to be that fast and efficient, you've got to be like a robot. You've got to be so well drilled that every bag is the same. And those bags on the day were Iron Mills bags, not Cerberus strength bags. And the handle was about 3 inches longer. And Shane came over to me straight away and was like, mate, these handles feel weird because they're almost scraping the floor if I use my normal position. And he was like, what should I do? Should I take my time or just do what I've trained for? And I made the executive, I didn't want to be put under that much pressure, but I made the executive decision to just say, let's not change anything. Let's go fast like we plan to. And you'll just, as the athlete, you'll just adjust as you go. You know, you'll feel the first bag, you'll feel the difference, you'll adjust on the second. By the time you get to the last bag, you'll have made all your calculations and adjust. And then he did it and it worked really well. But little things like that as well make it more risky for someone like Tom to speed up, because the bag is slightly different. It just takes, like Bish didn't get the first bag over, did he? Because he just went fucking, they just didn't go over because the bags are slightly different and he's trying to go fast. Easy to make mistakes, isn't it?
Yeah. A funny little story to wrap up on, actually. You know, where Shane came and trained bag throw at my gym, and with the 26 bag, and they put like a couple of kilos in to make it 28.
Yeah.
And then he was training that. And a few days later, the next week, Paul Smith was using it and was getting mauled by it. He didn't realise it was the plate was in it. So wonder why he was getting mauled by this the 26 bag. Well, it was 28 because it had the plate still left in it. Anyway,
yeah, it's quite a. Have you tried to throw the heavy bag over 5 meters? It's fucking hard, mate. Like it's that extra. Because what was is your gym got the 5 meter thing? It's got 5 meters, is it?
4.6, isn't it?
Yeah, but that 4.6 is high.
Yeah.
And didn't they have 5 meters in the? Or was it 4 point? Or was it 4.5? But they were training 4. Most people. Which way around was it?
Yeah, I think it was 4.5, 4.6. I think it's like 15 foot, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, because it was most people. Basically, most people were training 4 meters for that. Yeah. And then on the day it was 4.5, and it doesn't sound a lot, but it's a massive difference, isn't it? So yeah, it's crazy, because I think for the 4.5, you've got to have a much more vertical throwing line.
Oh yeah. The trajectory's got to be right, hasn't it? Like you haven't got a fucking margin for error, basically.
Yeah, it's just really difficult. So yeah, the throwing event, guys. Big tip for you that I learned this prep is make sure you train the exact height. Don't think, oh yeah, it'll do. Go to the extra effort to put that up, because honestly, it changes the throw completely. It really does.
Yeah, or if anything, go a little bit above.
Yeah. That's better. 4.6 you've got's perfect, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's a touch higher, aren't you? So yeah.
Yeah. One of the most impressive things I've seen in training recently was Tim the other day. He did 20 for 5 over that 4.6.
Really?
And a lot of people listen to this and they won't be able to imagine like how difficult that is. But
yeah, that's hard. Yeah, especially for 5, because that's like basically build up the fatigue of a full bag run by the 5th rep, isn't it? So yeah, is that no misses as well? Just 5 in a row.
Just did a set of 5, yeah.
You wouldn't if you told Tim that like a year ago, he'd tell you that fuck off, wouldn't he? Because
we like, what was this? He was like missing like 14 over 4. It was crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, so that's just an example, guys, of the progression you can make on a bag if you give it the frequency and the investment that it needs. Because Tim would pretty much do that as a warm up, wouldn't he, up to Worlds? Is that what he did?
Oh yeah, he's like done it like 3 times a week for about a year or something. And to be fair, like people are like, he'll compete under 80, him and Joe under 80 this year or whatever, and I think they'll clean up any bag throw event, and it'll be one of those things where people will be, oh yeah, they're good at that, whereas they were horrendous. Like,
it's weird how it was, isn't it? You put a load of graft into something, and then people just go, oh yeah, it's a good event from that. It's like, well, yes, I've made it a good event.
yeah, it's ridiculous. But oh yeah, so I'm doing a bag throw masterclass on Wednesday night. So go onto my Instagram, Linktree, and you can buy your ticket to the. We've done the dumbbell, axle, and log. The last 3 weeks have been great. You can still purchase those off the Linktree, and you can sign up for the throwing event. Really looking forward to it. Right, mate.
Right.
See you later. Nice one.